For today's Terrain Tuesday, we're going to continue painting our ruined house. Our roof is pretty much done, so we can set that aside. Got an entire loose section there. So we're just going to start working on finishing the base. We're not going to worry about the inside because we want that to hold models easily, so we don't want a lot of stuff in there. We're going to mostly focus on the outside. So first thing is I've got some cork scraps. You can get these sheets at pretty much any hobby store. And what I'm going to do, since these are just scraps I have left over, is go ahead and use these for pavement. So just gonna etch that out. I don't need much. So we're just going to cut that section out. So that'll be perfect, but we don't want it to be too perfect. So what we're actually going to do, kind of break it up, pull some out, destroy a little bit of the edging here. And then that will go like that, which we can afford to take a little bit more off. There we go, that's a bit better. Okay, so we're just going to apply our PVA there. And you could just paint it onto the cork itself, but you definitely want to go heavy. The cork's going to absorb pretty easily. Now on this side we don't have to worry about, but the front we do have. So again, I'm just going to look at this and go out a bit. And then cut that out. Just be a little straighter. Go. That's good enough. And again, we don't want it perfect. In fact, we're going to take a large chunk out there. That edge kind of came out on its own, and we'll rip that off too. Making a perfect hole for a tuft later. See how that works? Alright. Again, going pretty heavy on the PVA, not even bothering to water it down. Spread it around a bit. Now if you really want, you can take a small piece and just kind of stick it in there. If you don't want to do the tuft later, I'll decide how that looks once I'm done. Now, I have a basing kit here, and this is the Tundra basing directions from Gale Force 9. It has ash flock, which I'm assuming is this gray stuff, straw static grass, and winter static grass. I'm going to say the yellower is straw. I could look this up online, but and then fine grit. And the instructions: paint the top of the base brown, let dry. I've gone yellow, whatever. Coat the top of the base with white glue. Cover the glue with ash waste flock. So ash waste flock is the gray. Let dry. Repeat for a thicker covering, which that gets into problematic. To repeat, you've really got to be careful about disturbing the other stuff. paint a few patches of white glue on top, sprinkle with the winter dead grass, let dry, paint a few patches of white glue, partially overlapping some of the previous, sprinkle arid static grass, let dry, paint the sides of the base. The lovely thing is, it doesn't tell you anything to do with this. It only gives instructions for 3 things, not 4. So, you know, we immediately know that that's suspect. And my plan is to go over it with brown wash. What I will do is mix this and this, I think, to get kind of a contrasting texture and color. These I'll worry about if I'm even going to use them. And what I do when I work on stuff like this is I tend to get a Ziploc bag, which I don't have any on hand right now. These have their own containers. The problem being, while these are very nice and cute containers, applying to here and then possibly getting any residue back in is a giant pain in the ass and will be a big mess. So we're going to try that simply because it's fun to watch me fail. For this, I'm going to want to water the PVA down. That should be enough. So we're just mixing that. This just gives us a bit more flow. Alright, so we're just going to apply this up to those stones we've done. Now, this same technique, quote unquote, can be used with any basing or flocking material you may have. This is all about what colors and textures you think work for your model. In this case, I thought going with the tundra would be the closest to a wasteland. Whether it is or not, we will see. And you can always fix with paint after. And the texture is really what we're looking for more than color on these. If the color is nice, great, we can leave it as is. If I don't like it, well then, easily replaced. And we also want to be up against those. Alright, so you can see this stuff gets everywhere. Probably wind up wasting more of it than you buy. Top back on that in a bit. There we go. Opening that was certainly fun. Now this is just, I think, ground up cork. And we kind of want to sprinkle this in as well. Really what we want is this to be where we haven't gotten the other stuff. basically I'm just pretty much coating it on top of the gray stuff, because after it dries I'll shake it all off and see what's left. Ugh, and this stuff gets everywhere too. My recommendation, and what I should have done, but trying to show some bad habits as well, I would take a bowl and work over a bowl. Then when you're done with one, you can dump it back into your Ziploc bag, which I will be transferring all of these into. And it won't cause quite as much of a mess on your hobby space, because now I've got to get rid of all of this mess. So we're going to let this dry and then see what we've got. And we'll probably move on to applying our brown wash to the entirety of the model. Okay, let's see what we got. Just gonna kind of tap this off. And yeah, not super happy with the colors on that. Some of it doesn't look bad. And of course now I've got all this. Other things to use an airbrush for. So what I'm going to do now, take my super big brush, and we're going to mix up some wash. Yeah, because I need to do the whole... Well, actually... I am trying to get rid of this gloss. So, we're just applying our brown wash, and since I want the walls and everything done as well, yeah, that's perfect. See, I want to pick out all of this texture detail on the walls, and I'm going to kind of pat down this other parts. Just realizing I totally forgot that I wanted to paint the walkway. That's fine, I can come back and do that. There we go. Being very heavy-handed around the base here. And we're going to do the inside, just because we can, and we want it to look grungy. got some on the edges. See, this is the problem with the flop basing material. It's very easy for it to come unglued. Alright, so we're going to let that dry now. We've made all that mess. And like I said, what we'll do is I'm going to paint these gray and then throw a tiny bit of wash on them. And they'll be all set. Alright, so as we can see, I went ahead and grayed and washed the tiles for the path. Now we're just going to do a bit of dry brushing. Just need a little bit. Dry brushing is one of those very simple techniques that really helps bring out stuff. A lot of people don't like it, at least for miniatures painting. I think you should spend a bunch of time layering and doing more complex things. So we just loaded up our brush, wipe off most of it, and now we're just going to go ahead and apply some. Just trying to bring out that patterning on the cork here. So the particular brush you use is important. It has to be something like this, very, almost like a makeup brush. In fact, a lot of people recommend getting cheap makeup brushes and using those as your dry brush. We'll hit the rubble here. Again, it just brings out details and highlights. Okay, now in addition to that, I want to spruce up the texture that we applied. So I'm going to take a light brown, clean my brush first. Very important to clean dry brushes thoroughly. This was a brand new one, so it's going to have some staining from the color. So I'm not worried about that. As we can see from the water, the paint itself is gone. So I'm going to take this light brown. The brush itself you want as dry as possible. We want to get rid of that moisture within it. Okay, and then just circular motions to bleed off the paint and work it into the bristles until we get to where we want to be. So again, we're just going to be very lightly brushing onto this. It's going to help pick out any highlights. Removed possibly a bit too much paint, but that's fine. Better to remove too much than too little. If you don't remove enough paint for a dry brush, you'll wind up smudging more than anything, and that can really ruin the detail and textures you're trying to pick out. This is really just trying to bring up some subtle color. Okay. So at this point, this is pretty much done. What we're going to do is seal it, especially because of all of the loose particles. We want to have some sealer to lock those in for sure. They're pretty well locked right now, simply due to all of the wash that we've applied, but we also need to apply the sealer as it's matte to bring down some of the gloss from that gloss that that we used. Then once it's dry, we'll go ahead and apply some static grass as well as some tufts, so that'll be our next part. Alright, so we are now sealed, and as we can see, the gloss is nicely gone. So next, I'm going to want to improve upon the base here. A bit more glue, some water, and so I'm just going to mix our glue up. And what we're going to do is play around with the static grass, as well as do any tufts we feel like. Alright, so I've got these two kind of wastelandy static grasses from the kit. And what we're going to do, for instance, around the front, we're just going to apply our glue mixture pretty much just wherever we see yellow. And then, so static grass, it's very clingy and very, it'll stick pretty easy. So what we're going to do, just kind of sprinkle some here and there. And then take the other one, which this stuff is still static grass, but it's got some other junk mixed in. And we're just basically coming in and adding it for color contrast on some of the areas where we perhaps did not get it. The other stuff. Then the same thing down this side. We don't have to go and cover up everything right this second. And I'm going to kind of alternate which one I lay down first a couple times, just to bring out some of the differences between the two. Just pinching it, and then kind of dribbling it on, rubbing it between my thumb and forefinger. as much on this side. A lot more than I expected there, but that's alright. Okay, that's going to sit there and start drying. So we're going to grab our tufts and my tweezers here, and we're just going to start pulling some off and applying them. That one just does not want to stick there. So just apply it inside. I think we just need a smaller one on that spot. There we go. Put a couple more of these larger ones inside. Place some smaller ones on the outside. Alright, that should do. So we're going to let this dry. Once the glue's dried, we can shake off or blow off the excess glue, and we should be all done. Alright, as we can see, we have now got all of this to dry, and it's looking pretty good. So we're going to call this done for now. And our next terrain project, we will see what it is. I have to decide which building to move on to next.